Hello and welcome to a webinar which we've entitled Waking Up to Our Human Experience, Facilitating the Thinker. And I'm joined today by the lovely Chris Nunan, who is a voice dialogue practitioner, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about today. But I'm going to let Chris introduce himself in a little while, because there's plenty more to him than than just that. I'll just let you know a little bit about me. So I'm Sarah Sanderson, and I've been running a few webinars over the past about 5 months, I think it is now. It's mainly for my Facebook group, Tea and Insights. It's an exploration group exploring what and who we are and how this human experience works. And I've just been inviting different people to have conversations really about just that, how this human experience works, and the kind of different ways of looking at it. Predominantly, we're looking at the work of Sydney Banks, where it's been known as a few things, but what the way I tend to describe it is the inside-out understanding, where it's about recognizing that our experience is happening from the inside to out. So we're only ever experiencing thought that's taking form in the moment, regardless of what's going on around us. So we don't actually, it's not our circumstances that create how we feel, which often, until we kind of really look deeply into this understanding, it can really look like it is. So that's one of the things that I like to explore. And like I said, I invite other people to have conversations with me. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just sharing whatever you'd like in the first instance, and then we'll kind of get going, because we've not really got a plan for today. We're just going to see where it goes. So yeah, over to you, please.
Thank you. Well, my name is Chris Nunan. I live in Denmark, and about 20 years ago I got interested in voice dialogue. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is, because it's not about singing. But it's about understanding that we actually have different voices. I'll get into that. But I've also, the last 5 years, been very into the principles, and been into different webinars and conferences and teachings, and been to all over the place. I went to Salt Spring Island to visit the original Free P school, which was a fantastic experience. It really made me shut up, so and just listen, just because what's so interesting, I thought there's a kind of as Sydney Banks would say, there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways of pointing to the truth of our human existence, and one of them is as he also says, being quiet and just noticing what's going on. But when we live our life, the thing with voice dialogue is that it's reason why I was interested in it years back was that I had this experience that I had almost like a split personality. I'd have this very nice part of me that would be very, I'm a really nice guy. And then I'd have this other part of me that really wasn't very nice, actually terrible in many ways, and egotistical. And so I couldn't figure out, how's that, how come? I'm just this, I've really been working hard to be the nice guy, but I remember as a teenager I was also always thinking, well, why don't all the girls go out with me? I'm such a nice, listening, humble person. And I felt that the girls that I'd have long and beautiful talks with girls, but they didn't choose me. And so I'd have these temper tantrums when that didn't happen, or something didn't go my way. I'd go from nice to something very not nice in a split second. And I got confused in a way, because who is Chris Nunan, anyway, what's going on, so I had this experience, and then I read the book about Helen Sidra Stone had written about a book about voice dialogue, and what they're suggesting is that we actually have different parts or sub-personalities. So, I'll just give you some examples, because it's going to point to the principles also, I'm sure. Everything's the principles, by the way. But so you can have a part of you like a pushing energy, that you need to do something all the time. You're always busy. You never have a rest. You never take care of yourself, because you have this feeling that you want to do something. It's very, very important. You're actually working even if you're on holiday, that type of person. So in voice dialogue, we'd call that the pusher. It's using all your energy, but it seems to be a life. It seems to be a life and death, that you really need to work. Workaholic is another word. So that's one kind of sub-personality. And the thing is, if you have a sub-personality that's taken over your identity, so to speak, you don't recognize people who are different from you. Everything has to be like you feel and think it is. So how come that some people are like that? You also have people who are all the time want to please someone. And it doesn't matter if someone treads them on their foot. They'll say sorry, even if it's the other guy that treads them on the foot, because everything seems to be revolving around being pleasing, even if people are treating you bad. People can hit you and spit on you, and you'll say, well, it must be something I did. There must be something that I must be wrong. So in a way, that's a very good illustration that you have this sub-personality driving your car, your identity, and that'll be what we'll call the pleaser. And there's a wonderful Japanese film I saw once, where they had this pleasing culture, and you're really, really all the time smiling and happy. And there's this maid, she's working for some people who are really treating her terribly. And she's smiling, and then there's a scene where she goes in to get their food. And just before she comes out with the food, she spits in it. And then she goes in and, because what happens when you have an identification with a certain personality type or trait, what happens is that you have the opposite too, but you're kind of suppressing it, or you don't have contact with pleaser doesn't have contact with their anger. A person in the pleaser energy would say that anger is very, very bad, even though it could be very helpful to say no sometimes. That would be a bad thing to do. So when you're in a certain set of energy makeup or mask, we could say, or role, when you're in that, it feels like that's what you are. So sometimes you see people who have been they suddenly become very spiritual. I don't know if you know anyone that happened before. Suddenly everything's spiritual. And that means 24/7, everyone gets told that, oh, isn't it just nice? We can really see with the meaning of life. We are all one, how beautiful everything is, Even though the kids are screaming, the house is falling apart, you're not doing your washing, the food is not being made or whatever. That's just what God wants me. That's just how it should be. Everything is spiritual and, blah, blah. So you can also see that sometimes. It can also almost be comical. But of course, that's also, if you get too much into the kind of spiritual type of identity, you might just forget the real world. You forget, you don't get to do you don't send out invoices if you have a business, or because, everything, life will take care of me, kind of. So every part of us that kind of can take over our personality is or driving our personality it's interesting to look at, because it's really just a trick of the mind. It's really just an illusion. So we get into these illusions, and I see it sometimes that people where you get into this, and you kind of forget there's always another side. So does any of this make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me, Chris, because I've not studied with Sidra and Hal Stone, but I have studied a variation of a voice dialogue in my coach training. And what I'm seeing now through the eyes of the three principles, and what you said, the three principles are always at play. It's kind of like the foundation piece that everything else sits upon, is that I'm seeing that these different parts of our psyche, our sort of conditioned mind, you could say, are all thought created.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really seen that before when I was studying voice dialogue. I don't know, maybe it was explained that way. I don't know, but yeah, I see that we innocently create these different parts of ourselves that make up the psyche, because that's part of the human condition. That's what we do. So there's nothing wrong with having any of these sub-personalities, but recognizing that they exist, I can see can be useful. The piece which I'm interested in, which I hope we can explore, is now that I have got a deeper understanding of where my experience is coming from, that so far seems to have almost like taken me beyond the thought created selves. Of course, I will still at times identify with different parts of myself. That's being human. that's what happens. But when I take a moment to sit back, like if I just sit back now, I can recognize in each moment that I'm aware of what I'm thinking. So it's almost like the inside out understanding, the three principles, it's just given me a much wider view of everything that's at play. Whereas before I had I can see that it was a more narrow view of, now I'm this part and I'm behaving in this way, and now I'm this part. Whereas now it's almost like I can see, well, this is going to sound a bit strange, but I can see myself being the observer. So it's almost like I have no idea who I am anymore, but that's really cool. Because I can see all of these, I can see myself acting out all these different parts, but then who is the person who am I that's seeing? So yeah, I don't know whether I've just added more complication to what you were saying.
No, you haven't. That's what we're getting at. There's something behind all this. That's the real kind of thing. But what I'm pointing to is that we live in kind of, we have this kind of game in our mind. It's often from childhood. We had an idea. I had to be good. Or, you know, if I'm good, the family won't, my father and mother won't shout that much, or something like that. Or if I'm very good at school, if I do all my homework and, you know, get high grades, I'll get some love. Or, you know, if I become a super coach, everything will work well. You know, so sometimes you can get identified with these. It's kind of like, we call it, in Danish, we talk about what's in your closet. There's also an expression called skeletons in the closet. So what's interesting about voice dialogue is that when you start loosening the grip and not identifying with a certain way of being, life gets easier. Yeah, that's what you're saying, because you don't have to be in a certain way. Now, if you always want to feel that you should be identified as nice, you can't even go to a restaurant with other people without letting them choose what we're going to eat. Because when everyone has chosen what they want to eat, then you can choose, but not before, because you want to do the nice thing. You're not saying, I want steak, because that's kind of not, you kind of ruled out that possibility. And I think a lot of people have this inner critic, this voice inside, criticizing everything they do. It's never okay. That's a subpersonality. You know, or the poor me, everything is against me. No one loves me. I can never get a relationship to anyone, blah, blah. That's a subpersonality. So, of course, dropping out of this game, or one could say embracing it, saying it is what it is, you know, I'll have feelings that, you know, that if the kids are screaming in the supermarket, I might feel I'm a bad mum or dad. But that's just really that's about what am I identified with? Do I have to be you know, do I have to be anything in the eyes of others? Do I have to be what my mum and dad said I was going to be, you know? And we use so much energy fighting and trying to be in certain forms that we miss the point. We miss the beauty of knowing that it's taken care of, isn't it? It's really taken care of. And Sydney Banks, I found a quote where he talks about little mind and big mind. And for me, this is big mind, pointing to the principles, pointing to where our experience comes from. And little mind is running around and trying to be something you're not. Yeah? But that doesn't mean that because we've understood the principles that we suddenly don't have our little mind. Yeah? So the Greeks had this idea that there were lots of different gods. And also other cultures that have this. They have a lot of different gods, and there's an angry God, and there's a nice God, and there's a, you know, so it's all taken care of because you have a God for each temperament, each feeling. And in Greece, they had this idea that you'd better put flowers with all the, you know, even the gods you didn't like, because then there'd be peace in the family. In families, you also have this with identification. You'll have the kid in a family that gets, you know, the favorite kid that seems to do everything right, and you'll have the kid that always gets scolded or always gets, oh, why can't you be, you know, why can't you do it right? And that's also when we get stuck in our identifications. So one of the things that if you want to understand this or experience it, you just think, what do I really, really hate? Is there a certain person comes into a room, you're at a meeting or something, and there's a person that you really dislike. Oh, this person is pushy. This person is saying too much. Oh, why can't, is not treating others well. You might sit there and have a judgment on what you're experiencing here. But what that really tells you is that you're not in contact with that energy yourself. So we can maybe learn to understand that if we get all kinds of pushy people all the time pushing our buttons, that might be because we actually are living in a pleaser identification. We think that we always have to be nice. So of course, people who don't have that idea press our buttons. And this can go on and on and on. So well, I found out at the time when I started getting interested in this, that I actually had different sides and that you could speak to them. So that the other thing with voice dialogue is that you can say, well, hello, I've just, this person will say, well, I have this problem. Everyone's, I never get the job. I'm always, people don't speak to me, or I always have to clean up after the others. Every time there's a party, it's always me doing the cleaning. And I'm getting all the food and the gifts for Christmas for my mum and dad. But it's my sister who doesn't care anything. She just comes late and she just eats and goes away. But she's the favorite person. Why isn't it me? I'm doing all the cleaning. That kind of conflict. So the interesting thing is to look at it as a game in our life and see, kind of start recognizing what's behind this, what's actually going on. And one could say, where's this experience coming from? And it's very interesting facilitating people and saying, well, may I speak to the part of you that's actually egotistical and just does it as she wants? Do you have such a part? And you'll see people move over and say, yeah, I have such a part. I just hate what my sister does, and she shouldn't be in my family, and then you move back and look at this other part, this helpful, caring part, and you sit in the middle of this and you look and you say, wow, is this really true? So you start losing the grip on you. It's a bit like theater, really. So we have these role plays inside. So that's what I find interesting. And when you start going into the principles, you start realizing that you might be, as you say, you don't know who you are no more, Sarah. Was that what you said?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, now that I've had this deeper insight via the three principles, I'm just noticing more and more that I don't have to identify with my personality. I've just seen with absolute clarity that my personality, my psyche, is thought created. It is not true. It is having a psyche is part of our human condition. Everybody has a psyche, but it isn't anything that I need to be dictated to or identify with. And that has just been the most liberating thing imaginable to me, because it really didn't look that way. It really looked like all these stories that I had about being an abandoned child, and that I was rejected, and that the reason I haven't got enough confidence is because I was rejected. And all I could give, had many stories about different aspects of my personality. And when I saw that through the gift of thought I created all of it, it was just like, oh, wow, that's incredible. But I also appreciate what you're saying, Chris, that not everybody sees that, or we might at times not see it about a certain part of ourselves. It's like, oh well, yeah, with everything else I see that it's thought, but with this thing, I'm I'm an introvert, and that is true. That is definitely true. Everything else I can, do you know what I mean? So I can see where some people could still innocently identify with different parts of themselves. So yeah, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to explore this with you, is to see where it fits in with recognizing that our experience is only ever coming from thought taking form in the moment, which it can take the form of the people pleaser or the wounded child, or it can take that form, and how is dialoguing with that, with a thought a thought created self, how is dialoguing with a thought created self useful? Because is it a case of, if your wisdom is kind of pointing you in that direction, to go with it and play with it? What's been your, now that you kind of understand both, how have you found working with clients?
Well, I think it's mostly, the thing is, it can be a way of, getting to know yourself better, having a hands-on experience of that you actually have these identifications. Now, for example, you'll have this person say being very stressed, and it's always interesting asking the question: is there a part of you that isn't stressed? Is there something in you that's not stressed? Because that's so. I think it's a bit like a balance. I drew this drawing here. So if you're under, so I think it's about energy. So you have this energetic pattern, and we all go through it. It's kind of yin and yang. Plus is yang and minus yin. It's just a way of facility. And we have this, what's it called? This image where you... Infinity symbol. So I think when you're in the middle, when you can see both, when you can see your ego games and you can see it from the point of the principles, from your deeper knowing, and you can see both. It's just a game. It's just, oh yeah. You can have a laugh, because people do go into these games when they go home for Christmas. Suddenly they turn kids again, and they say, have the rows they used to have with their parents, even though they're adult and don't have So we tend to unconsciously drop into. It's like being together with. You meet your schoolmates after 25 years, and suddenly you start joking as if you're in a class, but you're actually 25 years older. But it's so easy to fall into these identifications. So what this energy pattern is, that so we're always swinging between feeling vulnerable and feeling strong. So maybe sometimes we feel like, thin, our skin is thin, and everything that happens in the world is, annoying us or making us scared. And at other times we are over in the plus side. We feel, oh, no problem. I can do anything. So we know this energy pattern. It's the same with metabolism and nature, and we have day and night, and so one thing would say being in contact with your vulnerability is important, because you can't be intimate with another person without being a little bit vulnerable. You can't be, I'm the best, strongest, blah, blah, and at the same time have an intimate relationship. It's so you could say that being able to look at it from the outside, and in voice dialogue, that's called the aware ego, or you could say the point where you can see the totality. You're not caught up in it anymore. And in Buddhism, it's called big mind. which means that there's little mind. That's what Sydney Banks was mentioning too. So there's little mind, that's the ego game place, and there's big mind. That's where we can see that we're only a part of something much greater. It's not we're much more. We're not what we think we are. We're outside of the thinking system, one could say. So I think that's just a way of putting it. And the question is, you asked me, is how can this be helpful? And right now, I had this, discussion with myself before this webinar, because I really do think it's with the principles, it's very, very simple. So we're thinking forward in the moment. And our experience can only come from ourselves. It's of course it's a misunderstanding to give the circumstances that they're creating my feeling. They are not. And thinking is, in a way, it's just what's going on is just neutral data. So consciousness is giving, I'm kind of coloring it, painting it myself, this image. But I think it's interesting just to get to know yourself and have a look at, well, for example, when I encountered the principles, I had this experience where I was in hospital. Some years ago, I had this experience that I had, I was very sick. I'm lying there in hospital, I'm bleeding, I have transfusions going on, and I mean, I'm watching, I've had this nasty disease, my immune system attacked my blood pellets. So I was really sick and I could die of it. And at the time I was very afraid and confused and full of medicine and stuff. So I switched on the television, and what they were sending that night on that channel was a Chinese splatter movie with a lot of blood and stuff. And this is so ridiculous. And I just had this, now, the universe is giving me this, on top of all my hardship. I just had this one thought: God has humor. This was so amazing, because the next second I just felt peace, and I felt love, and I almost like a religious experience, light in the room. I don't know if there was more light in the room, but my senses were suddenly different. I saw the doctors there. I thought they were such beautiful people. The nurses were nice. Everyone in the hospital were beautiful. And it just kept on and on, this experience of, so my circumstance was pretty terrible, but suddenly I was out of it. It was really, wow. And I don't know if this was a sub-personality, but a couple of days later, I'm getting some food, and I had this feeling, something inside of me saying, drink green tea. And I was thinking, I don't like green tea, but I said, okay, I'll drink green tea now. So I had this feeling as if I was being guided. I don't know from what or from where. It's just really interesting. And a couple of weeks later, I was just noticing that myself, that I've always had this fear of death, and it was kind of gone. It hasn't returned. I mean, I can be fearful of stuff, yeah, but that kind of vibration, that deeper feeling that something can go wrong all the time, and it might kill me. It was more like, no, there's no reason for that. It doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist. That was what I experienced. So then I read Michael Neill's book about Inside Out Revolution. And I experienced that, yeah, that's what I experienced. There's something like that. The principles were actually pointing to that type of experience. And I'm not saying that everyone should have this type of experience, or that, but that was just my way into it. And it was like waking up from a dream in a way. So when you get out into that kind of so-called enlightened state or whatever, that's just one, you know, it's nothing special really. But you can, but I have sub-personalities, so has everyone. So you're very easy. You go home and you have this experience and you start becoming the preacher. That's a sub-personality. You want to tell everyone how wonderful this is, even if they don't want to listen, you want to tell them about the principles. So, you know that phase?
Yeah. Definitely. And I think, like, what I'm hearing, what you're saying is, and this is where the voice dialogue is useful, because we can easily identify with different parts of ourselves but have no idea we're doing it, and someone else looking in might see that we're doing it, but we can have almost like a blind spot to it. We don't know that we've taken on a certain role. Is that one?
Exactly. And so when we went to the Free Pea School on Salt Spring Island, one of the things they do is say, well, the teachings aren't that many hours, and at one point they just say, well, this is what came to us for us today, you know. So, okay, so just be quiet and go down to the town or the market or whatever, and don't talk about the principles. Just have a good time, experience life. So okay. So if people are trying to preach the principles to you, that's not the principles. So really, having conversations with people and not having to talk about the principles is great, because I know something about the principles. I've had this experience, and that's really made me a better listener. I'm start getting interested in what other people say. But if my agenda is to all the time push, well, have you heard about the principles? That's going to help you. Even when people haven't asked for it, you might just be tricked by one of your sub-personalities, and you'll have this experience that people will start moving away. Well, they're looking up, when are we finished? Because you're into this salesman's pushy energy. But otherwise, if you're really into the principles, people will start getting into conversations and being curious about you. They might even say, well, you're a nice guy, or you're a nice woman. This is really interesting. Oh, okay. And so I think there was Jenny Aniston. I heard she and Dave Elleray, they went to Africa to teach the principles at some African country. And the first day when they were doing that, everyone was kind of sick, no one said anything. Have you heard the story? No response. So they asked one of the organizers, what's going on? And then the organizer said, well, you're white, aren't you? Yeah. So one of the things that Jenny realized, as I remember her talking about it, was that they couldn't teach them about resilience. These people knew everything about resilience. So it's about maybe becoming a little bit more humble and not being identified with being the teacher, or now I know better than everyone in my family how life works, so I'd better teach them everyone. Yeah. So I think maybe this voice dialogue talk it can kind of point out that you have to be aware that if you're in this, you get into these one-track discussions, or you really want to push it, you might actually be outside in. You might actually be, but you can be outside in and use a lot of inside out language, but still outside in. Yeah. So that's the point. You just recognize, okay, if my energy is that I really have to get everyone to understand this, I might be outside in, even though I think that what I'm saying is inside out. Because if everyone's pushing back and or getting into intellectual discussions, look at what you're doing. Yeah, look at what's actually. So I think that could be a very nice thing. So while I was preparing this, I came, things popped up. I had some insights, and one of them was I read a book years back. It was called Finite and Infinite Games. So the idea is that if we live our life as if everything has to be a goal, and we have to be the winners, and we have to succeed, and all this lingo, if that's how we see life, if we have to be the winner, someone has to be the loser. That's the finite way of thinking. But if we look at it as an infinite game, our life is one great infinite game. There's no kind of end solution or place to go, or nothing really has to be won. It's just one experience going, and the next experience, and the next experience, and the next. It's just a flowing state where we're thinking, we're experiencing, we're feeling. It's not just being in this flow. And then it starts being like a game. Oh, we can have some fun. We don't have to be a certain way. Well, we don't have to have a certain result. It's just about living and having fun. And I think that's the playfulness that might, occurs to me as a very valuable thing. I think we get confused with so that's also why sometimes I feel that it's really what's the word, oxymoron, when you want to do coaching and free P. But I can see the idea, of course, that you help others to point people, and they have their own solution. But in a way, it's more like I think Sydney Banks said on one conference. Well, now more or less, I don't quite remember, but just this you've already understood it. So sometimes I have this discussion with my wife about all these, because I love going to conferences and having courses and webinars. And she says, well, haven't you understood it? And I say, yeah. So why do you keep doing it? And that might be because I have some kind of sub-personality that thinks I'm going to So I'm just, just take it easy, relax. There isn't really any doing in this. When you have some insights, and we do have insights, our ego drops away. We can suddenly see, oh yeah, it's very much more simple. Our life is very much more simple than we actually think. And my parents were very much concerned about how would it be for me, would I be strong enough in the life? Would I, do good in school? And I remember all these parenting stuff, and I understand very much that it came out of love, but really, you don't have to, you know, life works itself out. The plant knows its own way of growing. That's how I see it. So I don't know. But that's more or less how what I feel is important, is to recognize that if you start feeling very almost obsessed about what you're saying, you might be caught up in a subpersonality for sure.
Can we open it up and see?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, let's see if anyone's got any questions or comments or what you've heard so far. Whether you think you're maybe caught up in one of your sub-personalities and want to just
guess who's going to answer?
Yeah. So yeah, just unmute yourself if you have something to share or a question for Chris.
Please.
Yeah, hi, Pankaj here. So I understand what Chris is saying, and especially what he says in the end, that even if you understand what 3P is, and it's all personalities, and you move from one personality to another personality, and then you come to this little bit of detached personality, which understands everything, and which is a little more peaceful, which is simple, which is good, but it still is a personality.
Yeah.
And that's why this question which Sarah was asking earlier, that who am I? I mean, even at that level, you will still have that question, because that question is still not answered. Who am I is still a personality. It's just a nice personality, a nicer one, perhaps a more helpful one than all others, but still it is. And in that sense, it is vulnerable to move to any of the side of yin and yang. So I mean, I don't think there is a way out. I mean, as long as you are an I, as long as there is a human experience, you have to be. That's what human experience is. You can't be without a personality. Then you are no more human experience. So then it is so in my understanding, it's not the big, there's a big mind, but big mind will not have an I attached to it. It will not experience anything as an I.
Yeah.
It's an energy which remains there. As long as we remain as an I, we remain as a personality, because that's how we experience this life. And it's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. That's how it is.
Beautiful what you're saying. Yes, I mean, we have personality. Yes. What I'm trying to point to is it's more like an energetic experience. So in voice dialogue, for example, you'll have these dialogues and you'll ask people to move to different kind of positions, talking to different parts. And it's a bit like when you experience it on your own, it can almost feel like you're entering a different state of mind. It's a bit like a trance, because we're not realizing that what we're doing, we're personality is really self-hypnosis. But that's the interesting thing, is that when you, at one point, I might ask people to, when I've used this, I'll ask them to say, well, have you got a feeling or experience of what's behind this? What's, so to speak, listening in the background, or what is looking out through your eyes? What is the, whatever we call it, thing looking behind. And then sometimes, very often, it's very interesting, people will say, well, okay, and they move a little bit back like this, and then they get quiet. And very often people have this experience as if they can see their different selves or identities, from another point, where they're not they're not in a kind of feeling state. It's more like an open space. It's similar to meditation, actually. You have this, you're watching this game, like something going on a stage, and this would be the closest I could point to this quietness, this place where you have the feeling that you can see it without being it. So when you can see it without being it, that would be the same in 3P we call inside out, as I understand it. So I went to a wonderful webinar with Keith Blevins, and he said it's a bit similar, like if you're in a room where there's a lot of stuff going on, and then the side of the room you have a one-way mirror. So if you're outside of the room where there's a one-way mirror, you can look in. But if you're in the room, you can't look out. So when you're caught up in your ego game, you're outside in, you can't see anything but yourself. But when you're outside, and you can look in. So what is an insight? Well, an insight is that you have this outside, your inside out experience. So you're looking in from this room, and you notice, oh yeah. And the same moment you notice what you're doing, it stops being a repetitive behavior. You kind of wake up, oh. So you might be shouting at your kids. I saw this video, Tea and Insight. You might be shouting at your kids, and suddenly your daughter says something, and and you can see it, and then behavior changes. You know, so we have this inbuilt system where we can recognize what we're doing, kind of from the inside. We can words, but so we have this capacity of seeing with clarity what's actually going on. So how this refers to kind of personality, I think it's more like I wouldn't know what to call it. And if you ask a lot of 3P teachers, I think they'll say, well, that's a mystery. We don't really know what the principles are. We just know we know it works. You know, when we have an insight, when we get an insight, we can see, and when we see that as a maybe stepping out of our ego game, just noticing, and it changes. I don't know if was that an answer? Did it make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And I mean, yeah, as far as, I mean, I don't know if I have a question, or I mean, what's the question? So I understand what you're saying, and I fully agree that there is a place where you can see inside out, and you can see that everything is a game and it's all playing out. My sense is that even that, as long as you have that sense of being an I, that somebody watching this is a, whether you call it personality or whatever, it is still it's perhaps the best place to be. I'm not denying that. No, that's something which we should all try to be. And if you know, we are there, it's much more peaceful there. But I think there is a place where there's no I as well. I mean, there's nobody to experience all that.
Yeah. So do I.
Yeah, there's no I. So.
So do whatever.
Right.
I had this experience that sometimes people have this, you know, they're running or they're meditating or laughing or So you can suddenly, well, I get this sometimes, this experience that it's a cosmic joke, and it's kind of and it's always because I've, every time I get into trouble, it's because I've taken life too seriously. So when there is no I, who's going to experience that there is no I?
Right.
Yeah. But we can be a place where we have an inside out experience, and when we start being aware of that and start cherishing these quiet moments and this ordinariness, we don't have to be special or anything. It's just built into the system. Resilience, love, happiness, it's all there. So when we start get out of these ideas about having to work hard to get there, or being special in some kind or way, life starts getting easier. I think that's what it is. And for me, it was just voice dialogue. It just made sense for me that, yeah, well, of course, we have these personality traits or sub-personalities, and we get caught up sometimes in maybe you see these videos with J.P. Sears where he's making fun of spiritual, and he's pinpointing these sub-personalities. What he's really showing us is how we get caught up in our own, ideas about. I see that's happening a lot. Also, as spiritual people who are spiritual, because you forget that you don't really have to have purple clothes and anything, or say sometimes I'm getting crazy. Some of these free peace forums where people are writing the same words all the time. Thought in the moment, I say it too. But sometimes I think is it getting said as if it was I'd rather see kind of some result of having this understanding instead of throwing mantras in to each other. Oh, it's just I just love to. I hope this makes sense. I've enjoyed it anyway. So thank you, Sarah, for giving me this possibility. And at my hospital experience, as I was mentioning, what I did have a sense of was that my self-importance and it may be just a second, my eye wasn't there. I could see everything without, it's very difficult to put words on a formless experience because we only have form to when we communicate, I guess. So, but it was like someone or something just shifted. It's the best words I can have about it. Yeah. So now this little voice inside of me says, "Did you do this well?" So I had this. I love this doll. I saw that recently. It's called Ugly. And I also have this one that's actually the teddy from my childhood. This one, 56 years old. Yeah, and I like being a bit aware of that. You can actually change personalities just like that. Yaga baga. So we're doing it all the time. What I just wanted to point into this is when we start, it might be a good idea to realize that, what's going on also in the personality level. But I also know that with the principles, we don't have to go into to see things this way. It's just, I think for me, it's helpful. It's helpful to see that we have this game going on. And why not play it? I think it's very nice sometimes saying, today I want to be the clown and I'll put on my red nose or whatever and I have fun with my kids or whatever, you know, instead of being this serious guy that's very intellectual and, as I used to be, you know, educated. So why not have fun with it? And I think Dick Bettinger calls it I think he called it the game of duality. So I like that idea that, yeah, we are in it. Why not have fun with it? Okay, I think that was enough for me.
Well, Chris, I was just wondering whether, because I did say that we would run on till
Okay.
15 minutes past the hour, because I just wondered if there's a way of just demonstrating voice dialogue, because I totally agree with you that you know, life is well, for me, life's a giant playground, and you know, let's have some fun. And one thing that I do love about the way the three principles describe the human experience is that it is just that, it's a description. It's not saying you can't then play with voice dialogue, or you can't do this, you can't do that. There's no rules to life. Woohoo! So could we take a few minutes just to have a play with voice dialogue? I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, if you have, do you have? Can you have this? Have you? Is there a certain type of personality that you usually get into?
You pick one for me, because you've been witnessing me, so you pick one.
How many groups are you running right now, Sarah?
Just one.
Okay, I thought there was something else, mastermind or something.
Oh yeah, that's finished now.
Okay. So do you have a part of you that's very, very busy? Or, you know, all the time wanting to write something.
I have a part of me that is worried I'm not moving fast enough.
Okay. So when is that part active mostly? When do you experience that?
All the time.
Okay.
I'm not doing enough.
Okay.
Yeah, wasting time, not doing enough.
Okay, very good. So do you have other times where you just relax and just don't have an agenda?
Yes, while I'm talking to you now.
Okay. So Sarah, just for, you know, just to demonstrate it, the part of you that likes to have something, you know, that's always busy, the part of you that's worrying about is doing enough. Could you give that just try to give that a physical place? It just, for me, it would be like moving in just like this, or could you just move to that part of you? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you, Sarah, am I speaking to the part of Sarah that's very worried about getting things done?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello. So are you worrying a lot about Sarah? How do you feel about Sarah, what she's doing?
She is being really indecisive and not getting on with things.
Okay. So that worries you. I can see that. Yeah. So what's the feeling in your body right now?
Like a curled up spring, you know. I can't remember the phrase, but you know what I mean. I just need to get moving.
Okay. Well, I can understand that. I'm pretty sure that you're really good at moving. Yeah, yeah. So it's really nice that you came forward, because I'm sure there's some other part of Sarah that doesn't want you to run the show. Hmm?
Yeah, but then we'll never get anything done.
No, nothing will get done if the other part takes over. Yeah. Do you remember from maybe Sarah's childhood, or would she have was there a reason why she had to be that busy or clever, or that you exist?
It's just fun to be active and doing stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So this is a short demonstration I did. Was there anything more you feel we need to hear from you just right now?
It's not always nice to feel so wound up.
Oh, I see. I see. Well, I'm sure that we'll return to that. So thank you, Sarah. Let's just move you back to where you sat before. Okay, beautiful. So Sarah, what I want you to do is you just had this idea that we've been speaking to a part of you, and now we're back where we came from. So this part of you actually said there was this feeling of being wound up, and maybe also a feeling that not getting enough done. Could you recognize that feeling from where you are now?
I feel more relaxed sitting here, but there is a slight fizziness.
Yeah.
It's a different. Yeah, I am more relaxed out here.
Yeah, beautiful. So the thing is to just recognizing this difference is what we're going for here, is just to see that there's an inside and an outside to this. Right now, where you are right now, it's more neutral, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
More neutral, and where you were just before felt more charged.
Yeah.
So that would be how we swing in and out of our energy patterns. So on the other side of this, Sarah, there's a part of you that actually feels that maybe feels that Sarah is running too fast. Yeah. So may I speak to that part of you that wants to take it more easy? And you just move a little bit again, maybe to the other side, Sarah. Good, very good. So hello, I'm pretty sure that you might be the energy, and Sarah, that wants to take more easy. Doesn't have to run webinars all the time and stuff. Is that true? Are you there?
Yeah, I don't mind running the webinars. That feels effortless, but yeah, I don't see the need to rush.
So you're not worried, or are you worried? Well, how do you feel about the Sarah we talked to before, the one that was kind of tense?
She's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So what do you has she been running too fast, or what? How do you mean crazy?
Oh, just things will happen. Things will unfold. It's okay. There's no need to rush around.
Okay.
It's just a waste of energy.
So I get this feeling with you that you're looking a little bit more from the inside. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see. I like this feeling of relaxation and calm.
So how does it feel in the body right now, in your body?
It's open and just like an ocean.
Yeah. Like maybe waves?
Yeah, it's quite still, really. It's
Oh, well, yeah, okay, still, yeah. Beautiful. It's nice getting rid of the noise, isn't it? Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Let's move back in the middle again. Now we're moving Sarah back between her two subpersonalities. So on the one side you have this tensed up figure, and the other side you have this relaxed, open figure. See, that was what I meant with this drawing. We have two sides to our energy system. So you can maybe feel right now a little bit strange, little bit empty. And that's fine. So the last thing we're going to do, Sarah, is could I have you move back a little bit and try to watch both sides at the same time? Just try to move back. And watch Sarah's different parts, the yin and the yang part. Just watch them. And we say where you are right now, I'd call that the place of wisdom. You might have words, you might not. Yeah?
Yeah, they don't need to fight each other.
No.
It's that gorgeous dance between the two of the being in the world and knowing that there's more to, there's just more.
I'm getting that feeling too. I feel very much, it's very beautiful, clear. Yeah, I don't know, but thank you. It's so beautiful. So let's move back to where we started, Sarah. Thank you very much. It was so beautiful. So that's really just what voice dialogue is very typical, is that we have these opposing energies in our psyche, and it's just made like that. It's not good or bad. But stepping back, wasn't that a wow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that's very similar. It's pointing to the same kind of realization that the principles are pointing to, that there's this place where we can see it and not judge it or it's just, okay. It's just energy playing out. And if you watch the video, you can also see how your expression and also how your energy can change. And I've seen people have, lots of people have very different energies, and they're trying to be one place, but it's, and it's all about embracing. It's all about accepting. Okay, who I am. I think there's a poem of Rumi says, anyone who comes to you, knocks on your door, ask them in and be nice to them. Be nice to your whatever parts you have. And it's all a dance of energy anyway. So Robert Frost, he has this poem, my favorite. We dance around in a circle and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. So I hope this was helpful. I thought very nice of you to volunteer. And you can do this at home. You can try to shift, maybe have an experience. And some people use journaling. to, you know, to get closer to, you know, the thing about journaling is if you write down your stuff, just writing it gets you into a different position than, you know, you're kind of having the feeling that you're writing it out, that you can watch it from a different perspective. So that's a well-known way of, if you don't have a facilitator, what I was doing was facilitating. If you don't have someone to help you, you can always play around, and if you feel that's interesting. So.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah,
thank you for giving us a taste of voice dialogue and how you understand it, and also where you're coming from with the 3 principles understanding, and that gorgeous experience that you had as well. And like you say, every experience is, you know, there's no right or wrong to it. There's no kind of better or worse. This life is a wonderful gift, a wonderful game to play, and let's have fun. So Chris, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who was live, and thank you for everybody watching the recording as well. And I'll just unmute everybody, and
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you, Sarah and Chris. Thank you.
Bye everybody, thanks for coming.
Yeah, goodbye.
Bye.